One of the most enjoyable classes we race at Redhill Raceway is for fly slot classic race cars. The appeal of this class is the huge variety of cars that are available and the amazing amount of detail that Fly puts into their cars. Fly has manufactured hundreds of different race cars, including various models of Porsches, Ferraris, and many more. After a lot of browsing online, I decided on the Porsche 908. Even after I chose the 908, there were different models and many liveries to choose from. The 908 I chose was a Fly 908-3 Turgle that won the 1973 European Hill Climb Championship. As with any car from Fly, the running gear can use some improvement. In this video, I'm going to outline the modifications I did to bring my 908-3 up to race standards. Our club rules require that you retain the stock motor, but upgrades can be made to the wheels, tires, and drivetrain. I decided to replace the axles, wheels, gears, and guide with slotted parts. The bushings were lying around in my spare parts bin. The key to any car is traction, so I used NSR Super Grips on the rear. If you don't have the parts lying around, Slotted makes starter kits for many different applications that include the rear wheels, axle, spur gear, spacers, and bushings. Now that we have the parts, the first thing to do was to remove the body and see what we had to work with. What I found was that the 908 is not a pan chassis, but has a very simple motor pod. I separated the pod from the chassis and started installing the upgraded parts. In front, wheels and tires from a slotted kit fit perfectly and gave me the ride height I wanted. The bushings were installed in the motor pod, and a touch of glue was used to keep them in place. I pulled the stock pinion from the motor and installed a slotted sidewinder pinion gear to match the slotted sidewinder spur gear. Next, I glued in the motor and assembled the rear drivetrain. A stock slotted snap-in guide that I had left over fit perfectly, and I added new braid and new lead wire. Since the car was pretty light, I filled the magnet pocket with tungsten putty. I checked the body fit and found that the interior was interfering with the chassis movement, so I did a bit of grinding on the inside of the body. After bolting the body and chassis back together, it was time for a track test. During the test, I determined that the car needed a bit more weight, and an 8-gram piece of lead was added to the chassis. The additional weight improved the handling of the car, and after limiting some of the pod movement with electrical tape, it was ready to race. This was a pretty simple project that turned out great. The car now runs as good as it looks and is very competitive in our Fly Classic slot car class. Plus, most of the parts came from my spare parts bin. Thanks for watching. This is Jim Rose with NorCal Slot Car Scene.